Hey babes, my name is Nadia Sayre, and I am back with chapter 15 of The Rebels, which is the first book of the Northwest Uprising. And if you're new here, welcome. Lovely to have you. Just so as you know, I read this through unedited. It is all one shot. And I do this because I started this entire channel for a friend of mine with cerebral palsy, so she finds it difficult to read books. And I know she likes my mistakes and my face expressions and my reactions, so I don't edit any of that out for her. Hopefully, you enjoy the experience as much as she does. If not, well, I apologize, and you can always find my link down there to go and follow me on another platform and maybe go and purchase the books, or at least become aware when I am finally able to do audiobooks. But in the meantime, let's get started on The Rebels, Chapter 15. Sonia continued north for as short a time as she was able, taking the first road to the right, trying to give us some space and freedom from Steve's return fire. The tanks fell behind, but not as far as I'd hoped. Those metal monstrosities could move. Son took another right, the northern turn taking us away barely before we were cut to ribbons. Each time, Acelia followed as close and precise as if we were being towed by the yellow school bus, even down to sliding off the asphalt and onto the verge, causing me to jostle the machine gun. The first few times it happened, I sprayed bullets into the air, trees, even the ground, kicking up mud and gravel. Once I got the hang of it, I managed to get my finger off the trigger in time to stop wasting precious ammunition. Steve disappeared behind a corner, and I tried to swallow, my tongue sticking to my teeth. Those few mouthfuls of water at breakfast now seemed like they'd happened in another century. My mouth got a whole lot drier when we hit a straight stretch, and I found myself looking into the barrels of Steve's guns. I kept pulling my own trigger gently, taking deep, deliberate breaths, exhaling hard enough to move the scarf over my mouth, trying to keep from fainting and doing as much as I could to hide behind a skinny stand and an entirely too small gun. Seahorse pounded on the cab, screaming at Acelia to dodge right now. We swayed heavily as Acelia swung the wheel frantically, trying to keep us alive, when a high-pitched voice caught our attention. "Here!" I twisted my head to see what was going on, and barely retained the presence of mind to turn only my head, and not everything else too. Jolly held a rifle out the window to Seahorse. It looked like my rifle? Seahorse took it, delighted. "Where on earth did you guys get this? For that matter, where did you get any of this? I thought all the guns were turned into paper clips." "Ah, you know our government. Never throw anything away that might someday be used to kill someone or rob them." I took advantage of the narrowing road to concentrate my fire. Bastards couldn't avoid me now. I whooped when the lead Hummer began steaming, then smoking, and slewed to a stop. Steve got out and ran around, frantically trying to open the hood and check their engine. I took advantage of the lull by grabbing more boxes of ammunition and stacking them at my feet, then shook my head at Sin. The old dog still snoozed against the cab. He'd looked up briefly when the shooting started, put his head back down, and decided it was nothing to do with him. I turned back to the gun, my elation dying abruptly as the next Hummer in line simply cut around the broken Hummer, and the tanks muscled it out of the way, pushing it to the side of the road. The soldiers from the downed vehicle leaped onto the tanks as they passed. Seahorse fired, and the soldier manning their machine gun toppled, giving us a moment to breathe. I could barely make out the other Steves as they dragged the fallen man out of the way and put another in his place. Seahorse turned her attention to the next man in line and grunted in satisfaction when he fell. "Just like shooting ducks at the county fair." "We still have the trucks and tank to deal with," I said dryly. "Nah, you're no fun." We were forced to slow our fire when we hit a winding stretch of road. Steve had to slow even more. It seemed Oregon's windy roads were a natural defense for us because Sonia and Acelia, well used to our roads, Took the corners in the dark like they were competing in a cross-country race. Come to think of it, we were. I took the time to take stock of my truck and the holes peppering her. It was worse and better than I expected. There were plenty of holes in my tailgate, a few low down on the cab, and more through the windows. But since nobody was screaming in the trucks, the kids must have been okay. Despite all the damage, she was still running. I cocked my head and listened, frowning. The engine was noisier than it had been. Bastards must have put a hole or three into my nearly new muffler. There was only so long we could keep running. We needed to slow them more. The light bulb went off. "The landmine!" I turned to the soldier. "We need to tell the bus to drop the landmine. Some asshole should hit it." After all, this is a narrow, winding road at night. Everybody's swerving all over the place. Yeah, my logic was working okay. I hoped. I continued to shoot anything that showed, while Seahorse spoke to Azealia through the open window. Azealia stomped the gas, and we slowly gained on the bus. Seahorse screamed for Alex to drop the landmine carefully. As we passed over the landmine, I saw the tail end of the torn fabric Alex used to lower the landmine to the road without setting it off. Stroke of genius, that. I probably would have dropped it and hoped for the best. I could only hope the thing still worked. After all, Sonia's been carrying it for days. Alex dropped it out the back of a speeding bus, and it still hasn't exploded. I just hope that if something really heavy, like, say, a tank, ran over it, something should go boom. And if it was a dud, well, our lives really couldn't get any worse. "Hold on!" Azealia screamed. I crouched, spreading my feet and bending my knees while holding onto the gun's stand for dear life. I wasn't sure what to expect, but that girl screaming was never a good sign. I'd barely finished bracing when we screeched around a sharp right corner. I lurched and Seahorse slid, banging her shin awkwardly against the wheel well. Barely a quarter-mile down the new road, a huge fireball lit up the dark sky, silhouetting the trees that hid us from Steve's view. A moment after that, the whoomph of air hit us. A gust of hot wind rocking the trees and making them dance. I whooped, punching the sky in triumph. Behind me, screams of victory erupted from the bus. I twisted around. The girls who'd been sullen, dazed, and afraid so recently were hugging each other, flipping off the fireball, and generally showing so much more life. A couple of the girls were crying, hands covering their mouths as they stared at the fire dancing above the trees. Seahorse reached up and slapped my leg enthusiastically. A short scream tore from me as a line of fire shot up my leg and through my hip. "What the fuck?" I swore, jerking involuntarily as the leg gave way. Only my death grip on the gun stand kept me from falling and hurting it worse. Seahorse scooted closer, gripping my ankle to hold me still while she examined my leg by the light of our boom. "Congratulations! You're missing a little bit of meat just above your knee. Not as much as your arm, at least. We'll need to go over everyone when we stop and make sure there's no other hidden injuries." She indicated her own side, and I saw the slowly spreading black stain. I clumsily knelt next to her. I had no idea when that bullet nicked me, but now that I knew it, my leg and my arm were all I could feel. Damn it. As I dropped down, it also dawned on me that she only wore a pair of stolen pants and a flimsy negligee-style top. Outside. At night. In winter. "Well," I said, checking out her side, "you're so cold you're not bleeding as much as you could be, so that's probably a good thing. Let me just..." I pounded on the roof of the cab. "Hey, kiddo! Can you pass us a blanket? Seahorse is freezing!" I turned back to the injured woman. "Anyway, this looks more like a deep graze. Or a hole that's not too far into your side. I hope there's nothing important behind there." The soldier huffed a pained laugh. "Your bedside manner is terrible. And no, I don't think there's much important stuff back there. I think it's mostly fat right now. Can you..." "Hey!" Jolly interrupted her. "Here's your blanket!" I took it from him with thanks and wrapped the freezing woman up in it. "If we're lucky, Soon you'll start bleeding like a normal person, I commented. Seahorse needed liquids, rest, warmth, and soon. The biggest problem, we'd learned, was infection. No more readily available antibiotics. Well, no antibiotics at all, but, Kiddo? Jolly stuck his head out the window, the wind whipping through his curly hair. Got a first aid kit somewhere in there? While the boy rummaged through the packs, I locked the machine gun down. From here on out, I'd be using my rifle. No sense wasting bullets we can't replace. I peered through the scope, checking out the glowing fire growing smaller with every spin of the tires. Hey! Help! I turned to see Jolly half hanging out the window, waving a little red first aid kit. Pass it here. I stretched back. The boy shook his head, stubbornly refusing to hand it over. You're watching the back. Besides, you need bandaging too, and someone should keep an eye on her. I could barely make the kid out in this light, but I knew the look on his face too well. Big, pleading eyes begging to help. Something, anything to contribute. Please? Your mother will kill me. I shook my head. Fine, I added, resigned. She'd have to catch me alive before she could kill me. At the rate we were going, I'd be lucky to last another month. I braced my knees and stomach against the corners and top of the truck bed and stretched forward, feeling the dampness in the wind, numbing my face as I reached for the boy. He pushed off from the seat and I grunted, feeling the weight of him as I pulled, straining to get him over the edge. One last heave. I groaned, the muscles in my stomach tightening as Jolly slithered over the side and into the safety of the bed. Weak. His teeth flashed white as he grinned. Getting tired, are we? Nearly lost me there. I sagged down, feeling like I'd just run a mile. Piss off. I barely slept for 3 days. Some people need their sleep. Jolly was already cleaning Seahorse's injury. Clean pad and bandage laid out, waiting to be opened and used. Or you're getting old, he suggested. Jolly jumped a little when I fired 2 shots at a Hummer, forcing them to slow a little more. Old, I muttered under my breath. I'll show you old. Seahorse walked him through the steps for properly bandaging the wound, her voice tight with pain. She was the perfect assistant to her own case, passing him what he needed as he needed it. I cast my mind back, walking through the last few hours, trying to remember if anybody else had been hurt, and my heart stuttered over the thought. We should probably see a doctor for our hinky heart. It's obviously not working right. I snorted softly, as if the near death on multiple occasions on one day wasn't enough reason to have weird heart rhythms. I caught a glimpse of something way back on our trail, but my eyes felt like they were full of sand, and I couldn't be sure what I'd seen was accurate. I barely caught myself. Kiddo, can you take a look at this? Jolly turned away from Seahorse, looking pleased with himself at the neat job he'd done. I made to pass the rifle so he could look through the scope, but he waved me away and pulled a small, collapsible telescope, like the ones you see in pirate movies, out of his inner pocket. I couldn't see it, but I knew he had a shit-eating grin on his face. That lil' shit. Seahorse readjusted behind us, completely covering herself in the blanket with just her face peeking out. I shivered inside my layers, envious that her part in all this was done and she could rest. There's at least 2 more trucks back there, Jolly announced, pulling me back to the rather important present. They've just passed the remaining tank. Remaining tank? You mean you think we blew up the other tank? I grinned. That left 1 tank and 2 trucks. The next second I wanted to collapse where I sat and just sleep. All these changing emotions were exhausting. I only see 1 tank, the boy confirmed. He continued in a small voice. They're chasing us a lot longer than I thought they would. They gotta make an example out of us. Them soldiers been getting fat thinking they're the only fish left. Now we come along and throw a rock in the works, messing up their roadblocks and shit. I grimaced. Those roadblocks were damn scary in hindsight. Anyway, we made them look bad. And since there's more of us than them... They can't let us get ideas into our heads, like maybe we can beat them if we work together. I stopped and went over what I'd just said. My mouth had been on autopilot, throwing shit out without running it by any brain cells first. But even so, had I really just said we could beat a freaking army? I came to the reluctant conclusion that I had indeed. Fuck. Maybe, the boy sighed, an entirely too world-weary sound from him. Did you manage to find our parents? No. Sorry, I said gently. He looked down, stray curls blowing across his face, before raising the telescope again and watching our back trail. I rubbed his back, hugging him to me. Too bad we don't have night vision goggles, he said eventually. We'd be able to turn the lights off and lose them. Nah, we'll turn them off when we hit gravel again. The asphalt proved too difficult to follow at any speed at night, but the gravel was a different matter. I looked up at the patchy clouds, assessing them. If the moon came out, maybe we could shut the lights off sooner. The truck slowed and I turned to see Son braking to make a turn. Her lights flashed over a sign. Scott's Mills. Azealia pulled up next to the bus and I leaned on the cab to talk to my cousin. I need gas, Son said without preliminaries. We're too low to get back. You guys? The soldier's been hit in the side, but she's alive. The kid bandaged her up. How are we on gas? I asked Azealia. We just filled up a few days ago, so we're fine. But if we're hitting a gas station, we may as well put in that half-gallon we just used. I could hear the excitement in the girl's voice. We'd outrun an enemy that'd been the stuff of our nightmares for 2 months. Bloodied Goliath's nose. I think she liked it. Right then. I waved a tired hand at Son to lead the way. Let's get on with it. Steve's still back there and I'd like to sleep sometime tonight. 5 minutes later, we were at the only gas station in town. When Son got out of the bus, she was immediately mobbed by Obelix, with Sin finally finding the interest to stand up and get her attention too. She crooned to them, calming the puppy who'd been whining with anxiety. Jolly and me got started on the pumps, and I was grateful that the little town was ancient. No automation here, so it only took us a few minutes to get the gas flowing. Azealia opened packs and passed out additional clothing and sleeping bags to the freezing girls. While Jolly filled the tanks, I helped Alex get Seahorse into the bus so she could lie down without having something digging into her. What's up with this? I asked Azealia, fingering the tough fabric in the back of the truck. Oh, it's this shade cloth stuff we found in the nursery, Azealia replied. Jolly got the idea to use it as camouflage for the truck. Worked too. We had 2 patrols exit by that road. The only one has gone back so far. Damn it! There's another patrol floating around? I leaned against the truck and closed my eyes for just a moment. The ground rolled under my feet. My eyes snapped open and I clutched the side of the truck, only to realize that the ground hadn't moved. I shook my head, trying to rid myself of the sensation, but it refused to leave. Blood loss. I looked up, my head weighing heavily on my neck, to see the spokeswoman standing next to me, holding a first aid kit. What? That swaying sensation? The woman checked my arm. That's blood loss. Drink some water. You need to stay hydrated. I'm Eleanor Ray. Don't tell me that! I exclaimed, flinging up a hand in a lame attempt to shield myself. A few short days and I already felt allergic to knowing anybody's name. Reynolds, she repeated deliberately, with a hint of bitterness. The only reason we don't use names is if you have people to protect. All the people I need to protect are right there. She tipped her head, indicating 2 girls. One was the Latina who'd done the first bandage job on my arm. The other was the blonde who'd caught my rifle. The blonde carefully eased the battered Latina into some warmer clothes, helping the other girl pull them on over dark bruises. How did you end up being a brothel madam? I asked, too tired for tact. And is everybody branded? What is it? Eleanor's lips compressed as she knelt down to check out my leg. Jolly passed me the nozzle for the gas pump, and I shifted to fill the tank while Eleanor worked on me. Eventually, the woman looked up at me with scraped-together dignity. Yes, we've all been branded. And it wasn't by choice, I can assure you of that. I tried to protect the girls, and when I couldn't do that, I could at least tend to them, bind their hurts. Eleanor stood wearily, brushing the dust from the knees of her skirts, and faced me squarely. My daughter saw fit to join the enemy, and her entry into those ranks involved putting myself and her two best friends into that hellhole. Tears shone in her eyes as she made the admission, the patchy moonlight reflecting there. The girls, seeing Eleanor's distress, came to stand beside her, the blonde helping the other. The Latina's head wobbled with weariness, but they stood there, daring me to say something about Eleanor. Good enough, I sighed, unhooking the nozzle. Welcome. You've just stepped from the frying pan into the fire. That's it? Eleanor leaned in, trying to see me clearly. Maybe you're feeling worse than I thought. How many fingers am I holding up? She held up 3 fingers. All I need to know about you, they showed me. I nodded to the teens. Whatever. Welcome to the rebellion. Name it. Own it. The words Mary had spoken just a few days ago echoed in my head. I closed my eyes for a moment, enjoying the sweet relief of pretending I could find oblivion. When I opened them again, Eleanor and the teenagers had gone. Thanks for joining me for Chapter 15. I will see you next week for Chapter 16, so long as I don't get a cold again.